Hi, my name is Greg Canty, and I'd like to welcome you to the Win Happy podcast. I love chatting to people from all walks of life about their lives and their careers, about the choices they make along the way to pursue their happiness, and what winning actually means to them. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chatted with Michelle Furey, who comes from that famous Irish musical family. Michelle's career wasn't a musical one, but one in the beauty industry, which resulted in her establishing her own beauty clinic. Her life took a huge turn in 2018, when just like many others, she went to Turkey for what should have been a routine tummy tuck procedure. This procedure turned out to be a botched horror show of monumental proportions, which has resulted in Michelle needing 21 subsequent procedures to restore her health, which has still not been fully restored. Michelle, determined to make sure that no one suffers like her, has started her own cosmetic surgery company, Aesthetica, to provide safe, affordable procedures for those who need them. Our conversation provides a fascinating insight into her life, into this poorly regulated industry, about who needs these procedures, and what would make them take the same dangerous journey as Michelle took. Let's hear from Michelle. Michelle Furey, how are you keeping?
I'm good, Greg. How are you?
I'm good. Well, actually, I'm really tired, and that was the conversation we were having beforehand. That's what happens when you stay up working too late, and I believe you're fairly wrecked as well today.
I was in London for the last 2 days with the Harley Street company that we work with for the hospitals. So it was very hands-on, the usual due diligence, speaking with the surgeons, meeting with the directors. So, and then it's all the fine kinks of owning a plastic surgery company, just to make sure everything is in alignment and regulated. And then, and then you are getting flights and the weather's quite bad, and you go back straight to the office after the airport and you just feel like, oh my God, I haven't left this place. So yes, I totally understand the concept of exhaustion today. So
yeah, and there's a thing as well, isn't it, about that sun deprivation, not getting enough sun during a day. So if you don't see enough of it, I think it does kind of weigh you down a little bit.
I think we all have SAD, really and truly, especially the winter time. So I am a firm believer in that, definitely.
Tell me what's on your mind today.
As I was coming back from London, I had gotten a phone call. I think I kind of touched on it with you, and it was about how the UK government is changing regulation with regards to cosmetic surgery abroad. And it was such a welcome conversation to hear that's being had over in Parliament over there, to try and stop people from going into, and the specific words they used was into Turkey to have surgery done if it wasn't a necessity. So any elective surgeries would actually have to be considered if they were traveling abroad. So they were putting in new rules and regulations because their NHS system, very much like our HSE, is swamped with people having to be fixed when they come back. And a lot of people are coming back with severely diseases, conditions, different things that's happening to them. So like everywhere is under pressure. So it was such an interesting conversation to listen to when I was coming back from London today. So that's weighing heavily on my mind today, and it's certainly a discussion with some of the surgeons and doctors that I've been speaking with since I've returned.
Yeah, and in a way, that's the government getting involved as well, trying to make decisions on behalf of people. And
we're making it in the wrong way, though, Greg. If you think about it, it's the aftermath. It's like somebody saying we'll treat the symptom, not the cause. So it's all well and good saying that they're snowed under with the likes of the NHS and soon to be the HSE, hopefully will follow. But it's why were they going there in the first place? What drove them there? So that should be a talking point.
Yeah. And do you think they have the right to stop people making a choice about taking your surgery somewhere? It's a bit like the whole debate in America, around the pro-life and pro-choice and all that kind of thing, and the government coming in, making rules and regulations about, and, the counter-argument then, it's my body, I'm entitled to do what I want to. That there's no black and white, I suppose, with some of this stuff. I'm trying to bring in regulation, and clearly it's needed because of what you said, some of the disaster situations that result from people being operated on, or people doing procedures on them that go south.
Right.
Yeah.
But sure, like if you look, for example, not just there, the aesthetics industry, everything is overpriced. Anything at all medically you want to get done, especially here in Ireland or in the UK, it is phenomenal. One person can have a surgery here done for €17,000, and it would be, they were told it was the best option, it was safest to be here, blah blah blah. But it turns out their surgeons are actually flown into Ireland to do the work on the people, and they're flown back out again, and then it doesn't justify the pricing either. So, like, you wonder why these people are going abroad. The majority of them say it's because of the price and the quality, of the surgeon. One of our surgeons, for example, he does 5 bariatric surgeries a day. He's a professor. He works in Stoke-on-Trent Hospital. He is flying back and forth to Lithuania. He speaks constantly all over the world. He writes papers, so he's an author. So we know this man knows what he's doing. So he walks in, he knows the inside of someone's body. Then take an Irish company who only just recently started, say, do bariatric surgery, and they do 1 a week. So who are you going to trust? The 1 a week person for the best part of 20 grand, or professor who's distinguished and authorized and, all this type of fantastic stuff that he does in 5 a day. So he knows what to watch out for. He has the experience under his hands. And then you ask the question, is it justifiable, the pricing that you're paying for surgeries? Not really here in Ireland, to be fair. So you cannot stop people from choosing something that suits their lifestyle, their budget, and their needs. Gone be the days where people used to say it was a sin if you did anything with your own body. Then again, as you pointed out, there is no black and white when it comes to surgery, especially when it comes to the cosmetic side of it. Let's take, for example, somebody who is in the middle of transitioning, especially in the transgender community. They have a right to go in and ask for their body to be changed to suit them. And it's purely to do with how they feel in their own body. So you need to respect that. You need to understand, they were born, biologically male, but yet they identify as female. So they're entitled to go in and get different types of surgery. I think I had a conversation recently with somebody who was saying about, like, breast surgery. I totally agree that women who are, that have had cancer need to go in and have breast surgery. So they should be priority on the list. Well, what about those individuals who are transitioning and they need it because their mental health also is probably, ravaged. So pricing is a big thing to do with what's happening here, especially in Ireland. And then complications. We all know about, if you go over 3 hours on a flight, the higher complications you can have, so you bring it back in. And then you have the scaremongering. So let's talk about black and white when it comes to cosmetic surgery. There are so many colours in between, but the grey area is exactly where you have to stand over what's right for you and your body. So I don't think the government has a right to tell somebody what they can and can't do. As we know, here in Ireland, they don't have any services for transgender people. So if that person is choosing to go abroad for surgery, for transitioning, for surgery, no one has a right to stop them. So it depends on what type of a day you catch me and who I'm sitting with and what way their mind thinks, so you can't stop stupid, I suppose, with someone's thought process.
Yeah, it's funny with all of these things, you can take people's rights and people's freedom to so many different lengths. I always think about traffic lights, and you might say, well, that's interfering with my freedom. Why shouldn't I be able to go? Well, we're going to put a red light there, and it's a pretty good idea for you to stop there because it stops you being in a crash. Now, is that interfering with your freedom? You've got that situation in America, I've got the right to bear arms. Well, maybe it's better that not everyone is running around the place with assault rifles because they're kind of dangerous. It does take away your freedom a little bit, but, and you can think about freedom in so many different ways. And but like the traffic light situation, if someone believes that I'm putting someone in extreme danger by allowing them to go to a country maybe that isn't fully regulated, or once you're walking out of the surgery, they don't give a fiddler's where you're recovering or anything like that. So yeah, so it's such a complicated area. And you were in the eye of the storm, Michelle.
I know. I seem to be everyone's first point of call when it comes to something like this. If I'm not tagged in something a couple of times a day, I'm rang by journalists, or, obviously I've done a lot of TV and we know that I'm in the middle of doing a documentary, but it's kind of scary to see that, like, a lot of people don't understand the concept of free will and the right to choose. So, and then again, you've got people who, again, say, like, it's a sin, what God's given you need to take, and, this type of stuff. But what about, like, as I said, transgender domestic violence survivors? They didn't choose to have their nose broken. They go on a wait list in Ireland for years to have their nose fixed. They have to suffer with anxiety. They're on medication for depression. God knows what other psychological trauma they're going through. And then eventually they might actually get in onto the public health list to have their nose fixed, all because of something they choose not to have done on their own self. They didn't ask for their face to be kind of, broken up. And so then where's their free will? So when the government steps in and says, well, you can have it done, but you need to jump through all the hoops for us to see that you're suitable for having it done. There is a massive difference between somebody who is a domestic violence survivor and told to wait up to 4 years to have their nose done. And there's a total difference if somebody just flies into Turkey, has a botched nose job, comes back in and then immediately has something fixed because of, as you said, life issues. So they could have breathing difficulties or, something very, detrimental to life. So they're the ones that put a lot on. So I do believe the government are on the right track. It's just we have to figure out exactly where the channels go. And I suppose a lot of people like me who do know exactly, A, being a survivor of botched surgery, and B, developing a company that is actually able to look after all of the people in the grey area. I'm actually the only one person who can actually give a full informed decision about what's happening here and where they have to go. So I suppose it's scary, isn't it, Craig?
It's very scary. So you mentioned that you're a survivor from a botched operation, a botched situation. You were one of the ones who went to Turkey. So what I'd like to do is maybe if we just put a pin in that story for a second.
Yes.
Because what I would like is for the listener to get to know you a little bit before we come around to that topic.
Perfect.
So Michelle Furey, and to some people, yeah, I know that surname. So the question I like to ask my guests is, who the hell are you and where did you come from?
I am a mom of 2 beautiful daughters. I am also a loved sister, and loved niece, in a family full of musicians. So my family are talented actors, amazing entertainers, unbelievable musicians, and the most amazing showmen that I've ever seen and in this world. And I know I'm sounding biased because I'm very much a dad's girl, but I grew up in a household where entertainment and storytelling and the industry with music was where I should have been. I didn't actually come from that type of a background. A lot of people was like, oh, you had a privileged life. I actually didn't really. I kind of grew up on the south side in the inner city by my grandmother, and spent some of my life then living in Newcastle Village with my parents. But I had one foot in an affluent lifestyle with the musicians and celebrities, and the other foot was squarely put firmly and rawly down into the inner city in Dublin. So I saw both sides of society, so I think it has worked beautifully in my favour because I have empathy and humanity for some things. So I can see how hard people work to get where they are thanks to dad and my uncles. And then the other side of me then is I can see how people suffer that's under the radar and the desperation of people to go and have stuff done because of the poverty line. And so not only that, then I'm also a winner. I won 2 national awards for my business for innovation in what I do. And only a couple of years ago, in the middle of COVID, I was the only recipient to win a humanitarian award for my work with domestic violence survivors and the transgender community with aesthetics. So I rebuild the faces of domestic violence survivors, and I will masculinize or feminize the face of anybody who is, waiting for response from surgery or, in the transgender community. So I suppose in a way, I didn't actually go into my industry that I was told to go into with my famous last name. I actually veered into a different industry, and in my family, I'm celebrated for being in a different industry, not vilified like some people would do because I didn't follow the family tradition.
And tell me, how did you end up living with your feet in 2 different places?
I was born the night of the Stardust fire, prematurely to my mother. I was over 3.5 months premature. At the time, it was called a premature baby. I wasn't supposed to survive. The night I was born, my mother's 2 bridesmaids had gone to the Stardust themselves because they were with my mum when I gave birth, and they had passed away that night in the Stardust. And for some very strange reason, my grandmother had to step in because obviously with the shock of me supposedly supposed to die, my mum's 2 best friends had passed away, and I survived. She was actually greeted the next morning by the doctors and her mum and a psychologist, and was moved into another room because the bodies from the Stardust victims were actually moved into the burns unit, which was in the maternity unit in James Hospital. It's no longer there. she was shocked to find out the night before that I wasn't supposed to survive. So she was expecting them to come in with bad news. She didn't expect them to come in with me being the good news and them being the bad news. So because I was so premature, they had to keep me in St. James's Hospital. And my grandmother in the inner city in Dublin, just outside Oliver Bond, had to go up every day with my mother. And I was obviously staying there until my lungs fully developed. I was months and months in hospital. And then I ended up living up there with my grandmother because obviously my mum was suffering with depression. And, and then there was at that stage, then there was other kids due. My brother was due. And it was an amazing experience because my grandmother was a strong woman. So I don't think my dad ever had a chance to stand up against her. So it was kind of like, whenever he came looking for me to come home, I was either, spun off into town or, all this type of stuff. And I'm affectionately in the family called Doll Furey because of me being prematurely born. The only place that could get closed for a premature baby was the Doll and Teddy Bear Hospital, which was in Georgia Street, and it has stuck. So the entire Furey family and Wilson family call me Doll Furey. So it's kind of a good thing, but it's because I had a very grounded granny and an extremely grounded family of musicians that they kind of allowed me to be living on both sides of the track, for want of a nicer way. I was the only one out of all my dad's children that was born in the Liberties and married in the Liberties.
Yeah. What was your grand's name?
Her name was Anne Wilson, Nana Wilson.
Nona, is it?
Known as Nano, yeah. She's a very famous character. Every Christmas, she's dead since 2020, and every Christmas still to this day her local pub still puts a painting of her picture, and he gets a mural done and it's her face with the old characters of Dublin all in the window. It's lovely to see. I'm looking forward to seeing it now in the next couple of weeks for Christmas. So
your mum wasn't well after the trauma of all of that, so your grand Nona, Nanos. So she pretty much looked after you for those early years, did she?
She did, yes, definitely.
Yeah. And tell me about the Liberties, growing up in the Liberties. Obviously, it's kind of like, I don't know, inner city, Dublin. You do have that Dublin accent, by the way, I'm sure you well know. Was that a good place to grow up?
It was an amazing place to grow up. I know a lot of people are kind of freaked out about the inner city in Dublin. I never was. Me growing up in Dublin, I want you to imagine some like summer nights, the smell of the Guinness hops, the community of Oliver Bond, flats all standing on the balcony watching each other's kids. There would be hurling or football or breakdancing in the 80s would be down on the pitches, and the families are watching each other. There was, there was discos and there was like trips out to the zoo, and it was all very much a community. As I was growing up in that environment, I was included in the local school down the road. My granny would march me down and throw me into the class with a cousin, or, I would be going to school then in Newcastle Village as well with my mum. But every time I had a chance and dad was away or something like this, I was always, please, can I go back to Nano's? Growing up for me, my grandmother was in a 2-bedroom flat. She had 8 kids and a lot of granddaughters that came and went, so it was a wonderful time. You could hear the sirens at night going up the quays, to the hospital, or, you could always have like a warm summer night. So, and you're only a walk into the city or to the zoo in Phoenix Park, or there was like the house was always filled with people, a lot of love and massive amount of laughter. It was always, and then I was treated a lot different than some of the kids locally, because I was such a person's child. My parents got married in the 80s in John's Lane Church up the road. The road was completely closed down, and we didn't, I wasn't there obviously, but they had Charlie Haughey and his wife attend. So the roads were shut down by police, and my dad back then had like, the top of the pops with, 316, and he was kind of like, it was a girl from the Liberties marrying like a celebrity at the time. So it was big. So when I was growing up in the inner city, the community kind of embraced me. But then again, you'd always have a very smart mouth child that would come up and say, oh, Joe, you're that celebrity's brat, or you talk funny, because I obviously don't speak like them, but I do have a Dublin twang, so I was protected in the area. It's such a lovely place to live as a child growing up because you've seen everything.
Yeah, well, I worked not too far away from you because I worked in Guinness.
Nice.
for 3 years. So yeah, we'd be very familiar with the Liberties, and my son Brendan, he was living around that area for a few years in one of those new apartment things not too far away from the brewery again, and you could get a sense that community spirit from the place. Obviously,
it didn't have anything, Greg. If you think about it, back in the 80s, like you lived like hand to mouth, literally, like in those 80s. And my grandmother must have fed so many family members. of other people's families in the block that she lived in. You know, there was always a pot of stew going up somewhere, or if you didn't have a pile of potatoes forever because it's, you know, paydays, or somebody else would have it, you know. So we were fed not only with love, but we were always had like fresh meals every day, where she'd always go up and get like the meat in Meat Street, or the vegetables off the veg man in Meat Street. And, you know, and it was the crack as well, you know, the characters of the inner city that you always knew, you know. So it was lovely. I loved it. Really did.
And tell me about the relationship with your mum. She obviously wasn't well for a while. Did that
Yes.
develop, or was that difficult for you?
It was difficult all around, but like they don't talk about it nowadays, is what they did. But she did beautifully. Like, she went on to have 5 kids. We all grew up totally, you know, rounded. Every one of us was successful in our own industries. You know, my sister's an international gamer. You know, with Microsoft, she's phenomenal following. You know, you always see her at GamerCon. You know, my youngest brother is an unbelievable musician. You know, he's just finished something with RT there recently. You know, he's out all the time with Finbar's son as well, young Finn Furey. So you kind of see that, like, out of all of the children that she had, she never let it affect her as bad. It was just because she was young when she had me, had suffered really severe depression. I wasn't supposed to survive. I was so sick. Then she had the death, you know, so it was a lot to take in at her young age, you know. But the relationship is fantastic. You know, she's very much hands-on about things, and, you know, she's very good at fixing things now. I see a lot of my grandmother in her now, and her sisters as well. They reared me. They were only young teenagers at the time, so I didn't just have one mother. I had my grandmother as like the matriarch of the family, and then I had a number of aunts that raised me as well. So she had a lot of help, and still to this day there's only herself and her only remaining sister, Esther. So I'm not lost for, you know, any maternal love, you know. So there's always somebody there who'll fight your corner.
Cool.
So,
were you the youngest of your siblings?
I was the oldest to come along. So the last of them was O'Connor, who's 17 years my junior. So it's a lovely kind of mix in the family, 3 boys, 2 girls, you know, that way. So my dad's forever given out. He's outnumbered by women in the house because even the dog is female, and he's more granddaughters than he'd like. But, you know, it's all fun and games in the Furey household.
And talk about music. If you're immersed in that, some of that had to have worn off on you, did it?
Oh God, it does. So music in our family, it's kind of like, I'll give you an example now at the younger generation. So my nieces and nephews, they come and go into the house and they'll watch like Connor or Dad or whoever's in the house, and they could be stringing a guitar or a banjo, or, you know, playing with a harmonica, or could be any sort of instrument. And it's not a case of, you know, they're being told that they have to play it. In our family, music is in the blood and the air in totally different ways. If you look at my dad, he's either humming, he's tapping his wedding ring off of the, you know, the steering wheel, or, you know, or he play with the spoons when he's waiting on his breakfast to cook, or, you know, my dad is, and he sings, he talks in music tones as well. Like, he lectures the kids, you know, if you go out onto that road and you get hit by a car, but bump, bump, you're dead, you know. So he brings all these, you know, these things in for the kids. So, like, looking at the younger generation, you know, my daughter as well, she plays the piano and stuff, and she's phenomenal with the keyboard. But you kind of have, and she's only recently discovered she likes the ukulele, which was kind of a big shock for the house. But however, it's not a very folky type thing, but it was amazing to see like how they kind of branch off. It was, why is Grandad playing that? Or how does Connor make that noise? Or, you know, what happens if I press this? So it was kind of like you pick it up and you, like, none of them can actually read music, but every one of them are able to play all sorts of instruments. Now, if you ask me, do I play instruments? The answer is no. So I was subjected to lots of music. It was brilliant to see. I was taught how to play the fiddle when I was younger. Did I immerse myself into it? No, because it was almost expected of me. I kind of get a lot of flack nowadays because I'm not musical like the rest of the Fureys. You know, why aren't you in the industry like the rest of your family? You know, you should stick to the industry that you know. Well, the industry I know is totally different. When my dad was only recently asked, you know, about the industry that I'm in, you know, you feel like that she hasn't gone into your industry, you know. And Dad was like, no. If anything, we celebrate the fact she's not in our industry. You know, she's like the diamond in the family. She's done something different. She's doing very well. And you see the pride, not just his face, but my uncles as well when they talk about me. So it's lovely to see that, like, I'm not a complete black sheep because I didn't follow the music, you know. So
tell me, the young Michelle sitting in class, and for whatever reason, the teacher has totally and utterly lost your attention. Where do you go in your head? Where do you dream? What adventures do you end up going on?
Sitting in a classroom, depending on where I am. If it's primary school, I was a terrible chatter in class. I loved a bit of, you know, gossip and giggling. You know, it was always kind of like a bit of humour somewhere. There was amazing people that shaped my life, and I love being around them. So, for example, like, I grew up around like all the most famous musicians back then. So, like the Wolf Tones and the Dubliners, and, you know, like, I grew up on, like, on my dad's side where you were in RTE or when my teenage years, it was TV3, it's now Virgin Media. And then you've got kind of the other aspect of it as well, like staying in my grandmother's. So you're kind of sitting in class in primary school wondering, like, what adventures am I going to be up to this week? Or am I going somewhere with dad? Or you'd be sitting waiting on him to come home because he'd be on tour for like 11 months. You know, you'd have maybe 2 or 3 days where he'd be home and something else. And you know he's coming home from either America or Australia, and you haven't seen him for like near 9 weeks on something, or, you know, so, and you know he's coming in there, so you're all excited to see him, or, you know, or then like you're in secondary school and you're kind of looking at these teachers and you're wondering, what is the point of everything? You know, somebody once said to me, you know, isn't it great the way, you know, your life skills were set up in school, you know, learning to play Three Blind Mice on a recorder. Like, it's gotten you loads of places nowadays, hasn't it, really? So then you're kind of saying to yourself, well, what was I thinking back then? You know, you're pushed into education. You're told this is what you need to do to be something better. But the Board of Education didn't define where my career was going to go. The Board of Education didn't set me up for the life skills that I needed. You know, the Board of Education couldn't tell me, because I had a little bit of a different background on both sides of society, that I should accept something at the way they should do it. So I still do it to this day with my daughter. My youngest especially, you know, your exam, she's just done her junior cert and she's just had the result. It doesn't define you. You know, you go on and do whatever you feel that your heart do, but you find a passion in life, you'll never work a hard day. And that was given to us through the generation from my grandfather down. So it has stuck to us now, and I still use that. So I was a dreamer, I suppose. You know, I'd no acceptance of what I was supposed to be or who I was supposed. I could never be told what to do, thanks to my grandmother. So.
And when did you figure out what you wanted to do, and how did that come about?
I was working in loads of different places. I worked in like newspapers. You know, I worked in the Leinster Leader for a while, the reception. I worked in the background for magazines. You know, I actually discovered what I wanted to do was when I became into the idea that there was something more out there to life holistically. I remember meeting a spa therapist in the inner city in Dublin. She was working in, I can't think of the name of any of the hotels that she was in, but I know one of the hotels she was in was only starting to bring out like spa treatments at the time. I remember she was telling me about how amazing it was to be, like how peaceful her life was, you know, standing for 8 hours a day. And, you know, there was massage and facials, and it was just all repetitive movements. And, you know, she was telling me things like, you know, you do your shopping in your own head when you're doing massage because you know all the movements, you know, or you'd be thinking about something, or a book you'd be thinking about, or, you know, there was different things she was telling me. And I got really interested in like naturopathic medicine. So I trained in like acupuncture. And my grandmother stepped in to organise that with me. She was like, well, you want to go to college? Let's figure it out. So they sent me beautifully. They sent me to the College of Naturopathic Medicine many, many years ago, you know, and then I went from there to train body therapy. So I got really interested in, you know, body treatments. And then when I went from body treatments and spa treatments and facials, I learned about certain skincare, and I got really nosy. You know, I wanted to know, you know, what's the next step after skincare? You know, why do spas have to oversell skincare products just because, you know, I don't know, 90% of a certain, you know, amount of people, they don't tell you the amount of people that have been checked to see if this cream works. Why is it that people were coming in wanting to change their faces with like a cream that could take them X amount of time when we know it's not going to reverse aging, you know? And then I got really nosy and started looking into the likes of aesthetics. And I trained in the University of Aesthetics many, many years ago, Jesus, over 10 years ago in the UK. And then I did countless courses with doctors and surgeons. And, you know, I learned all different aspects of the aesthetic industry, and I discovered what filler could do. So for example, if I walked into a room and I said to you, Greg, if I said to you, what fillers are to you, what would you drum up? What would you see in your head? You know, fillers on someone's face. Who would you see? You can randomly throw a name out there.
Who would I see? To be honest with you, who I would see is Chandler in Friends, because that was the scariest thing. Two things happened at the same time. So it was during COVID, and I remember we had to go to the football stadium in Cork, Porky Quay, for your vaccine. And you pretty much knew that everyone rocking up to get their vaccination were the same age group. And I swear to God, Michelle, I'm standing around the place thinking, holy shit, is this what my age group looked like? And and of course, you never look at yourself, but you're kind of casting judgment saying, Christ almighty, they've got very old looking. And at nearly the same time, I'm not sure if you remember, but there was a Friends reunion, was it like 30 years or something? There was a TV show. And some of them looked okay, but poor Chandler being Matthew Perry, my God, he looked desperate. And a lot of people were saying there was a lot of drink and a lot of drugs, but he'd obviously got work done. And I thought, okay. So when you mentioned filler, I kind of translate that as being people making adjustments to how they look or whatever. And I thought, God almighty, they obviously went clearly wrong in his case, as well as probably a lot of bad living and all that kind of thing. And then when you also use the word filler, I think of the stuff where you put in to plug a hole in the bath or something.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that I think of when you mention the word filler.
I was on a show, a fashion show. They had given me a slot, and when I first started out my career, and they had said, listen, we've, 20 minutes of a slot. Do you want to go on and talk about what your company does? This type of stuff. So I had obviously brought a friend of mine on. I had her there. We were talking about her face. But I was so nervous going on stage. Now you have to remember, I grew up in a time of, I lived behind the cameras, behind my dad. He was the one on stage, for concerts and behind cameras on TV and stuff like that. So I never stood in front of, an audience of people. And I thought my dad had given me great advice. He said, you have to reach out to the person and make them think outside the box. And that has stood to me to this day. So in that particular occasion, I actually had stood on stage. There was something like 500 women in a room, and they had guests and stuff like that. And there was the vendors, and there was obviously the models, and, the fashion photographers and all that was there. And the first thing I stood up when the camera went on me, I was like, well, if I said fillers in a room, what would you think? And everyone was really quiet. And I was like, okay, so let's take it down. If I said Pete Burns, what would you think? You'd have a bit of giggling. If I said Courtney Cox from Friends, what would you think? And, I know she's overboard, Michael Jackson. And they're like, yeah, no, totally too bad, this and that. And I said, okay, let me say something to you and I'll change your mind. And they were like, yeah, how? Now the whole room went silent after the laughter. And I said, what if I told you filler can be used to rebuild the face of a domestic violence survivor? Rebuild a chin, a cheek, a nose. What happens if I told you if somebody had a cleft lip that I'm able to rebuild it? What happens if I told you that somebody came in and they've had, some form of palsy in their face, that Botox can actually lift that side of the face better for them? So then they were all really quiet and they were all like, oh, Jesus Christ, and I started a discussion that was more thought-provoking, that they left me on the stage for 45 minutes instead of the 20-minute slot. And by the end of it, I went to sit back down and watch the rest of the show. The amount of women that was coming up and saying, God, you're so right. I've completely, turned things around. Or next minute we were handed business cards by different businesses who were saying, listen, this is the person we need you to speak to. And the turning point for me was when a community worker came up to me. It was held actually out in Drogheda. A community worker came up to me and she said, listen, I look after a number of domestic violence survivors that are hidden away in different housing. And I really think that you should be able to speak to one or two of them. Would you be willing to not come to us, but we come to you if possible? I said, yeah, no problem. And since then, I've had a lot of women and men, especially, come into me asking for help, and we have done. So some of the pharmaceutical companies that I work with, if I buy your stock and it's in our clinic, well, here's the deal. I want you to give me 20 free boxes so I can continue my charitable work. And in return, I will sell your product. I will talk about it. I will bare my soul to the devil as long as I get something that works back. And sometimes it works in your favor in such a way that you reach the right people to come in. And then on the other side, it's the trolling that I get. Go back to your own industry. Well, what is my own industry? Fury does. Go with what the Furies do. Well, not really. I don't remember my dad's industry picking up a needle and sticking it in someone's face, all this type of stuff. So then you have to you turn someone's thought process into something that is more provoking in thought process, that way. So instead of them saying, oh, well, no, Jesus, I wouldn't do that like you, some of them are, in bits, somebody looks 20 years older, but we don't know their lifestyle. We don't know their dietary causes. We don't know what their medication is on. We don't know how hard of a life they've had. How do we fix those things? Well, we start with ourselves, change your thought process, and then you can actually see it come. So yes, 100%, when I ask you what you think of fillers and you said straight away, Matthew Perry, well, 100%, I totally got it. Totally got it. But I'm sure after speaking to me now or anyone else listening to me will say, well, actually, I don't know if that makes sense. So.
When did you open your own business first?
2016 going into 2017. So I loved it. It was exactly what I wanted to do. It was amazing the people that I met, but it was amazing to try to change people's perception of not just me, but it in general. So yeah, a long time now I'm doing it.
Yeah. What was that business called?
Juju Clinic.
Juju Clinic.
Juju Clinic. So I was sitting thinking about the name of a clinic, and you always hear rejuvenation, all these type of names. And my oldest daughter was called Gemma, and she's the old Irish Dublin spelling of Gemma, which is the J-E. So at the time I decided to call it after her. So it was called Juju Clinic. So since then I have developed a plastic surgery company to correspond with them, and the plastic surgery company has come on leaps and bounds with the doctors that we work with in Harley Street Medical, which is a huge contract that I got. So we called it Aesthetica. So instead of aesthetica, just for something thought-provoking.
That's clever. So the services you were offering in your first business, Jujuve,
it was all dermal fillers, and I had doctors that came in and did the Botox. Like, I'm not legally allowed to do Botox here in Ireland, as we know. You must be a doctor. There's a regulatory, reason for that to be done, and it needs to be followed. So we would have, currently as I'm speaking to you now, I'm actually in my office. There is 2 doctors in 2 different rooms beside me now. One is doing a Botox clinic, the other one is doing consultations with surgery. So it's amazing to see how it has kind of progressed really well with what we're doing, so, and Botox as well has progressed in a huge way. It's deemed as medical for some things.
Yeah. So would I be correct in saying that's kind of like light cosmetic surgery or light cosmetic work? That's
non-surgical aesthetic work.
Non-surgical. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've started your own business. It's going really well. You obviously have a big interest in people, and I'm not sure if everyone would have that perspective that you have about, exactly what you said to me about changing people's minds about all of those things. You changed mine in a second when you gave me that example, just like you did with those 400 women in a room. In 2018, you went to Turkey.
I got the worst experience of my life. So
I'm going to stop you there now. So you're from the industry.
Yes.
You know about all of that more than most people would, the things to look out for and all that kind of thing. Can you talk to me about the thought process, you arriving at that decision to go there, and if Michelle Furey, who's of the industry, arrives at that decision? God love people who aren't from that industry and wouldn't be aware of the things to look out for, and yet you would have done. It probably shows you how dangerous this whole thing is. So what was the thought process?
So I own an aesthetics company. At the time, I was a woman who was a size 18 to 20. I wasn't happy with my weight, but at the same time, I was comfortable with my weight. I didn't see me as an issue. When I looked in the mirror, I saw me. I was happy with me. Now, we all pick things apart, but I'm in an aesthetic industry, so I know kind of what industry can do for certain people. So I was comfortable. I was contacted, obviously, because my family are who they are with celebrities and stuff. I was contacted by a well-known actress who had said, by her team, and they basically said, listen, she wants to come in and have work done. Is it possible, how to keep it to yourself? If we get you to sign a non-disclosure, could you do some work on her, blah, blah, blah. So I said, yeah, 100%, absolutely honoured, thrilled. You got to think about it this way. I'm in an industry that a lot of the celebrities know my family, know me through the family, and to have somebody say, well, listen, I have trust and faith in you because you're from our industry. I want to have this work done. I actually trust what you're doing. Can I come in? It's a huge big thing for you. So again, I waited. She arrived 4 hours late. It was going into 9 o'clock. Arrived with her entourage, for the want of a nicer one. She came in, she got work done. I obviously didn't charge her. She had said, oh, do you want to get an autograph or photograph with me? But you can't put it on social media. I said, yeah, 100%. It's just for a memory for myself, so you can show the kids or your dad and mum. So I said, yeah, I got in for a photograph. Absolutely thrilled with myself. I was skipping. I couldn't believe it. I'd done a great job. She was thrilled. She was walking out the door. She left ahead of her assistant. And obviously with the other entourage, so she went down the stairs. I was standing there and they were like, listen, this is the form that you've signed for non-disclosure. You can't name her, blah, blah, blah. You can't put it up on social media, just going through the relative conditions. I was like, yes, no problem. And you can't put that photograph up on social media. I said, oh, yeah, no problem. And then she went down the stairs. But when she was going down the stairs, she was halfway down and she met, the actress, and she said, oh, don't worry, that photograph won't go, because to be fair, she's not very aesthetically pleasing, was the word she used about me.
Oh, Jesus.
That struck a chord. Now I have to say now, she's no longer a very famous actress. I have to say now, she disappeared from the industry. Maybe karma did get her in the end, I don't know, but we want to wish her well, and I hope whatever she's doing in her life, she's happy. However, that night I went from being a happy enough woman, married 18 to size 18 to 20, mother of 2 daughters, to all of a sudden going, oh, Jesus Christ, if I'm not good enough for this woman and I shouldn't be on photographs, how's everyone else perceiving me? And at this stage, I hadn't thought of any of this before. So I actually went home and I kind of Googled plastic surgery, and, algorithm on your computer or your phone would pick stuff up straight away. And my phone started coming up with all these pages from Instagram, and they were all surgery in Turkey and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, look at that before and afters. Oh, look at them celebrities like Katie Price, all this type of stuff. And it got me into a kind of a, oh, Jesus Christ. And the next morning in the place where I was renting my rooms and stuff like that, there was 6 women who were all Polish. And beautiful, stunning looking women. I couldn't fault their beauty in any way, shape, or form. I naturally assumed it was Eastern European. They really do look after their skin and their body and, all the wonderful things. And I approached one of the women and I said, this is what happened to me last night, and, oh, Michelle, listen, we give you the number of our plastic surgeons. So it transpires all 6 of them had surgery, like all 6 of them in the same hospital I went to. Oh, you need this surgeon. He's brilliant. Don't go for that surgeon. It has to be this surgeon, So I was like, all right. So one of them actually, not I realized it now, like I do realize it now after so long, but I found out much later. She actually was working for the company by sending her friends and family to this surgeon. She was getting discounted surgeries and stuff like that. I had no idea. So she gave me his number and I was like, oh yeah, I'll contact him. But in the meantime, didn't he contact me because she had passed my details on? So I ended up flying over just after my 40th birthday, I think it was. I tell a lie, I would have been 30 odd. It was back in 2018. Yeah, it wasn't 40. It was in my 30s. I ended up flying to Turkey. They had love bombed me, for the want of a nicer way, on the phone. Oh, come, this is the available day. If you come at this time, you get it for cheaper, the usual stuff. Took money out of my savings, borrowed money off a friend, went over and decided, I'm going to have a tummy tuck done. So picked me up in this fantastic car. They fell over me in the car, oh, here's your water, these are the sites, this and the other. They stopped off on the way in Istanbul to a road and they picked up a strange man who got in the front, who introduced himself as the owner. And I had a split second of, oh my God, I'm in a foreign country with 2 random men in a car. You know what I mean? So you kind of think to yourself, oh, Jesus, human trafficking. And then you start talking about, your surgery, you should be lucky. You'll see the surgeon in the morning. So I had no concept that I didn't know. I didn't see the surgery. I assumed the photographs I sent in the surgeon had seen, and this is what his recommendation was. Got into a compound of 4 fantastic villas. Now, it's well known. People have known about this place for a long time. What they do is they find shiny, bright, young reality stars, bring them over. When I was there, at the time I was there, Katie Price was there. There was a very famous tattoo artist from London. There was a very famous personality who became transgender later on, but they were also known as Ken and Barbie type people as well. And then there was just normal Joe Soaps like myself that just went in for surgery. So one villa had 10 rooms. So there was 4 villas all with pools with 10 rooms in each. I arrived something like 7:00 in the evening. They had said, we need to speak to you. You need to go across to the villa across the way. So they didn't know my name. Everyone called me, hey, baby. Hello, baby. Let me take your bag, baby. All falling over themselves. Went over to the other villa. More patients were there. All of them were all gowned up. They were coming out of surgery. They were having it done recently. They had the bags, they were carrying around their drains. Some of them with bandages on. They looked horrendous. But I didn't know any different. I didn't do the research enough. I didn't know what I was to expect. They brought me upstairs to the top floor of this villa. The place was painted in black. I remember it so vividly. The owner sat me down. Very wealthy looking man. He oozed, affluence, but very much kind of sleazy in a want of a nicer way, And he was like, hi, you're booked in for your surgery, so it's going to cost $8,000. Turkey, $8,000 back then was massive money. Nowadays you can go in and get like half your body removed for less than 2, depending on where you're going, this type of stuff. So I went in, he took the money off me. I never forget, he had a machine that was there that counted all the cash. So he put the cash tray in and counted the cash. And he was like, right, so you'll be seen in the morning. Not, this is what you have to prepare, not whatever else like this, whatever. I went down, they took my passport off me and photocopied it and went back over to the other villa. This young woman came in a tracksuit. She introduced herself as a nurse and she said, we're going to give you a tablet to help you sleep. You'll be with the doctor at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I was like, okay. So I just assumed this is what it was. So instead of integrating myself with the other people, went into the room, locked the door. I packed a bag for the hospital next day, let myself out of the room, went in, had a shower in the communal area, came back out. So it was deemed to be a beautiful, it was a beautiful place. Everything about it was lovely. However, a communal washroom for 10 patients. Things I never clicked. Next morning I got up, they drove me to a hotel with these other people that were with me, some just normal Joe Soaps. One was actually, would you believe, one was a pastor from Scotland, young woman who was training to be a pastor from Scotland, was getting breast implants. There was a couple there, a husband and wife. He was going with wife, but they wouldn't let him go into the hospital. He was allowed to go in the car with her. All this type of stuff. Brought me to a very well-known hospital, sat me down, made me fill out all the forms. Everything was in Turkish. I signed everything, but wrote on the top under duress because they wouldn't tell me what it was. I was taking photographs of all the paperwork, so I knew I'd have it. The coordinator came down. She had a row with the young woman that was the pastor, and she basically said, oh, you need to sign it. You can't have surgery. And she was like, well, I don't know what I'm signing. And I was like, well, sign it because you won't get your operation. Totally oblivious to what was going on. And I should have known, but it was a different side of the industry. I wasn't aware. So anyway, they told me my surgery was due for 1:00. So brought up the stairs, rushed into a room, stripped down. I had 6 men come into me, And not one of them had a word of English. One of them was the surgeon, very rough. He was dragging a mark across my body saying where it was. Now, granted, I know the industry now, so I know what way they should react. There was no female present, so I had nobody there to kind of be there with me in case anything happened. Told me my operation was for 1:00 and I was to get up onto the bed. So I naturally took up my phone, had messaged my husband, Paul, at the time, had my ex-husband now. I had said to him, listen, blah, 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 this and the other. I'm kind of nervous, looking forward to it, all this type of stuff. I was under the impression I was having just a tummy tuck. That was it. That's what I paid for, just a tummy tuck. They told me my surgery would only take 2 hours. So I remember them walking me down at 1:00. I woke up at 11:15 that night. I had lost the voice box. I couldn't speak. I had a catheter that was inserted to my bladder wrong. It wasn't attached to my bladder because I was urinating in the bed. There was blood all over the bed. It wasn't a case of waking up from surgery and being confused. I woke up from surgery with everything wrong with me. Everything you could possibly think of. No painkillers. I didn't have morphine. There was nothing. Nobody around me. The room in complete darkness. The door was shut over. Totally and utterly confused. I tried to get myself to stand. I was calling a nurse, but I had no voice. I couldn't find all sorts. I remember I ended up pulling something at the side and I threw it at the door. So one of the nurses came in and I was like, I can't talk. I was trying to get, it took me something like 6 weeks for my voice to come back. Thankfully, thanks to James's Hospital. But the nurse came in and she was like, no, you stay in bed, and she had really bad English. And I was saying, you need to take the catheter out. And she wouldn't understand what I was saying. So I said, saying to her, doctor. And I was writing the word doctor. And, and I remember standing up and she was like, no, you need to sit back down. Now I had 2 cesareans successfully for my daughters. So I knew you had to wait a couple of hours after cesarean. I didn't have a cesarean. I had general anesthetic. So I should have been able to stand stone form. Made myself go to the bathroom, had asked her, please take out this, it's wrong, there's something definitely wrong, it's not attached right. I had, as I said, 2 cesareans, so I know how a catheter should feel. You should know it's there. So she got the doctor down, he came in, he yanked out the catheter, gave out to me, told me to get back into bed. Now granted, I should have just done as what I've said. However, when I say every alarm bell went off in my head, it did. I shouldn't be here, something's not right. If I close my eyes, I'm going to die. Exactly what I thought. And I thought that way nonstop until I got back to Dublin. So that happened at 11:15 at night. I've took photographs of everything, documented everything. Bed was covered in blood. My compression garment was covered in blood. I woke up with stitches in my chin, inside of my cheeks. I had stitches in my ears, stitches in my back of the legs, both sides of the buttocks. I had an incision somewhere else. I had bruising down my chest. Nobody could tell me what I had done. And obviously I had a tummy tuck. So anyway, I had a sleepless night where they took everything out, never gave me any painkillers. So I sat on a chair because the bed was covered in blood and I was afraid of infection. Nobody changed the sheet, blankets, pillows, nothing. I got up from the wall that I was leaning up the next morning because the coordinator came in the same, one from the night before, and she roared at me to get up, come on, we have to go, someone else needs the room, get a move on. 8 a.m. the next morning, I've had having major surgery. I don't know how long I've been asleep. Nobody could tell me anything. So I put clothes on myself. I'm still covered in blood at this stage. Nobody changed my bandages. Was rushed down the stairs to a back entrance, not the nice entrance that they brought me into, back into not the fancy car this time that we were brought in or collected in, a different type of it was kind of like one of those Mercedes vans, I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I had to bend my knees. So they shoved me in along with the other couples. And the only place for me to go was on my knees on the floor of the van as they drove me back, the bus van, whatever it was, public transport or patient transport back to the villa. One man who was with his wife who came actually handed me the seatbelt that I should have used, and he wrapped it around my arm and he put his knee against the side of my body so I wouldn't move. The woman who had her breast implants was supposed to have her breast implants. She didn't actually get the breast implants in. They charged her for it, but she never got them. And I think to this day she's still fighting with them. She was sitting on the opposite side and she was holding on to me as well. They went up and down hills in like anyone knows Istanbul. They rushed me back to the unit. I had nobody to help me up the stairs. I got into a bed. And when one of the nurses came around, she gave me a water tablet and a paracetamol. And I fell asleep. And I woke up every 4 hours to the sound of prayer. And I knew that if I woke up to every 4 hours in the sound of prayer, I survived another 4 hours. I made a phone call, changed my flights on my phone, and went downstairs and demanded that I go. But before they let me go, the nurse brought me into the communal toilet area and emptied my drains out into the public toilet. And somebody was in there using the shower beforehand. I was dropped to the airport eventually. I had to wait because at the time there was a well-known reality star who had to go and get her hair done. So the cars were out shopping with her and whatever. brought me to the airport and dropped me off at the wrong terminal. I had to walk 2 arrivals into departures, really sick, put me on a plane myself and flew back into the arms of my ex-husband and straight into the hospitals that were waiting on me. And I spent months and months getting better from that. They couldn't get any word out of the surgery or the surgeon. They blocked me on social media. They blocked the surgeons in James's to find out. I've had since then 21 procedures. 16 of them have been major surgeries and 4 of them have been rebuilds of my stomach alone. The most recent one was back in December and July of this year. So it's a horrible thought process to see that you have to go through all of this. I now am a size 6 to 8. I can't put any weight on. I've had repeated surgeries to fix things. I was putting on so much weight in my body that James did such a good job of keeping my muscles completely flat and saving my life that the fat had to congregate anywhere in the body. And in this case, it was the visceral organs. So they had to give me a gastric sleeve. I chose to go to Lithuania because I worked with a plastic surgeon. He had worked on my cousin. And when I went to see him, I found out what it was to have the right surgery, the right educated person to look after, the right aftercare. And I am Frankenstein's monster to this day. I've had 5 surgeons rebuild me from scratch. So Greg, I now own a plastic surgery company that knows exactly how to look after those individuals who are either, marauded into surgery here through, scaremongering. No, don't go abroad, your nipple will fall off, this. And we have documented it. We have spoken to other surgeries that's here in Ireland that have done that, with their ill-educated staff who have never had surgery done before. And also then to stay away from the likes of the Turkish hospitals. So.
And was there any hint anywhere before you went out there that maybe not all of these Turkish trips turn out the way they should do? They obviously did a good job at their publicity and everything else.
Great job. Amazing. So the way it works nowadays, for those that are listening, is that if you message a company on social media, they will ask you for your WhatsApp number. And when you send them their WhatsApp number, you are their best friend. How are you, my love? How's things? Come and have it done. If you bring a friend to get it cheaper, we'll give you free Botox, we'll give you free teeth wine, or we'll give you back your flights. All this type of stuff to get you in the door. And then they rush you. Oh, he only has this availability left. That surgeon is amazing. Everyone wants him, but this is his only date. Once you get in there, you're just a number. You've paid the money. They don't know. They either shove you onto a WhatsApp group with a load of other patients, but nobody monitoring these people to see if they have any help. The coordinator has ghosted you unless you want to go in for another surgery and this type and the other. And then it gets ridiculous. But I found out since that all 6 of the women that had recommended this hospital, each one of them had complications in their own way, but were afraid to mention it because they didn't want the original person who booked for them, to think that they were trouble risers, this type of stuff. So there's a lot of shame about surgery.
Yeah. What happened in your case? They obviously did an awful lot more than what they were supposed to do.
They did. Nobody knows. So according to the hospital that done all the scans in St. James's in Dublin, it looked like I had liposuction in my back. I had liposuction maybe in my legs. They don't know why I had liposuction in my legs. I have legs like a chicken. They should be hanging out of a nest. Do you know what I mean? Always was. Thin arms, thin legs. So we don't understand. My face was the big thing. I had stitches in the inside of my mouth. We don't know what they were. I know that when they went in to have a look, they were like, did you get the buccal fat removed in your face? And I went, no. So did they mix me up with another patient? Quite possibly. Anyone else, if they had all that done, it was a successful surgery where we went, oh, Jesus, no, thrilled with life. I didn't. I lost far too much fluid in my body. I was so sick. I had developed something like, I think it was a 5-litre seroma, and it felt like hot liquid in my body. The infection was incredible. I got such severe PTSD that I was afraid to sleep for a long time. I refused to go on medication, wouldn't take antidepressants. I thought, meditation would help me. Therapy certainly helped me, all this type of stuff. And then I got angry. I got angry that people like this could get away with it. I got angry, like in Ireland as well, like you've got celebrities, oh, go to this hospital, it's really good. And they're meeting people outside on a bus outside on like the main street of their village, to bring them for gastric sleeves because they had it done in a Turkish hospital, and then they get like a few pounds for every time somebody goes in, this type of stuff. So it got really severe. But I was doing really good research on rebuilding my body and discovering that the right surgeons, the right background, everything to do it was amazing. And then I discovered, there's so many flaws in Ireland. This is, people ask me like, people who go to Turkey, well, they serve themselves right. One particular group I went to, one actual well-known cosmetic company, what I won't name, and they know who they are. Their assistant politely turned around and said to me, well, a certain type of class of people who can only afford a certain kind of surgery go to Turkey. I went, hold on here. I came from both sides of society, and I had to have money for that. Like, so, and I paid $8,000, not 2 or 3 grand. I still got it done. Fairly recently, I had a woman come into me in Aesthetica who had a 4-inch incision in her rib cage. She was in getting breast implants, but she couldn't understand why she had a 4-inch incision in her rib cage. They had to go and scan her in the hospital to make sure her organs were still there, because Turkey now is being told that, they're starting to go on the black market for body parts. Another woman only recently messaged me when I was with Elizabeth. I was doing a show for RTE. Had messaged me to say, like, a woman had said, "Listen, I need to speak to Michelle. It's kind of urgent." So obviously the staff kind of vet them out and see what it's about. And I was filming at the time. I'd only just had a major surgery myself, and the woman said, "Listen, my 15-year-old was over in Turkey with family and friends. She got breast implants. Like, none of us knew. Like, she went missing for a day and came back, with breast implants. Well, how did she do that at 15? And what's to say about you as a parent in your relationship if she's doing this behind your back?" So it's a scary background, So when I designed Aesthetica, when I spoke to everyone, I was like, I want to do it for patient advocacy. I want to do it for those in the grey area. I want to do it for those who can help. I have more calls in the clinic of people who are botched, And as much as I don't want it, now you've got some scary people, Greg, I won't lie. I recently had somebody in that weekend, my staff deemed her the Jeffrey Dahmer of surgery. She came in and told us that she has her old breast implants that was given to her in Turkey in a jar at home. She has the buccal fat from her face in a little small specimen thing, a urine specimen pot. She has that at home. Her old teeth was removed and she got new teeth because she was coming down the stairs after a breast implant. They had dentistry hospital on the ground floor. They offered her $2,000 because she had major surgery upstairs to get all her teeth done. So, like, some of the teeth that were removed, she was given in a bag going home. Like, the girls were like, Jesus Christ, it's like Jeffrey Dahmer from, plastic surgery in Turkey. And the woman was thrilled that she has all these body parts. If you lose a leg here in Ireland, the old-fashioned Catholic way of doing it was you need to bury it, or they would never let you bring your gallstones home, or they wouldn't let you, all this type. Not that you would, but like, you've got this woman going over there who's totally got body dysmorphia and thinking it's brilliant that she'll come back trophies with parts of her body. Scary stuff.
I'm presuming that whole nightmare put you on a mission then to start doing this in Ireland safely. And is that the reason why you set up Aesthetica?
It did, definitely. Do you know what made me do it? Was the fact that people were living in a society that the cost of living crisis was killing them. So not only did I make sure that you've had affordable treatments for everybody, like I do a fat dissolving injection in the chin and jawline. It can be from €99 upwards. I trained a doctor how to do that same treatment. He was charging $400 for it. If you're causing body dysmorphia in people who can't afford different things for surgery or aesthetics. So take away the price, lower it down. I went back to the pharmaceutical companies and the surgeries. And so when I went into Aesthetica, I spoke to the surgeons. What's your fee? Went into the hospital groups. I actually interviewed 8 different hospital groups that had space for the surgeons. We had to get practicing privileges. I hired the best, the unbelievable, but he's actually an ex-judge, would you believe it? We hired the best consultant in all of the UK to come in and talk to us about plastic surgery. He educated me on the likes of due diligence and governance and what needs to be done, the machines, the service history, what type of things is up there. I spoke to many surgeons. Like, when I went in to open up Aesthetica, I sat with so many surgeons and said, listen, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is what happened to me. Would you like to come on board with a new Irish company? They said yes. Then I discovered that the majority of hospital spaces here in Ireland for plastic surgery can't be given because it's government mandated. It has to be for cross-border directives because, as we said, HSE doesn't have facilities. They shut down like addiction services and mental health services and, children with autism services. Like, they shut down really important things. So they're taking these spaces and sending people abroad for surgery to be done, and telling them it's done under cross-border directive and they pay them back and stuff, which was brilliant and it's great to see. But there was no spaces here in Ireland or Northern Ireland. So then I decided, you know what, I'm not going to let people fail. And I was having people come to me from all walks of life. And then really strangely, one day, John Barber, who is the consultant that works with us, who, as I said, is an ex-judge, he's brought in for the Quality Care Commission, huge thing. He's always on, medical tribunals and stuff like that. He was like, you have a dream and ambition, I'm going to help you. And he did. So he found me the right surgeons. And then he got me meetings with Harley Street, because if we couldn't get it done here, we could open in Northern Ireland. We could have people go into Northern Ireland, into the office in Northern Ireland with the surgeons. They could have an operation under the 2-week cooling off period after seeing a surgeon. And then we brought it even more to the public. Why don't you get a free Zoom call in the safety of your own home with your family who can ask questions you don't think of, with a surgeon directly, with one of our team in the background who can make sure that they're there, on that Zoom with you. So you're able to ask those questions at a time that's suitable for you, whether your family's with you or not, as long as you're somewhere safe, you're not pushed into coming into the office. You're not told about these, sales mechanisms. The surgeon gives them their honest opinion. He gives them, on big thing for me, I want you to do a slideshow of all the complications so they're aware of what can happen in the aftermath. They did all that. Then when Harley Street Medical Village came to me, like, Michelle, or Health Village, we want to work with you. We totally believe in what you're doing. To have the directors come into me and saying, listen, we want to work with you. I was floored, and then Aesthetica came to life. As I speak to you now, there's lists upon lists of women waiting to go in for surgery. There's many men looking for surgery. So all the surgeons that signed up, we discovered their fees. We discovered the pricing with the hospital. We actually discovered that with Aesthetica, you can get the cost of a surgery for nearly close to 1/3 or 2/3 less than what you were quoted here in Ireland. So begs the question is, who are you paying for surgery in Ireland? Because you're clearly paying for quality. Like, all the doctors that work with us are all, distinguished and published authors. They wrote books about different fields. That's who I hired. They're the right people that you need to do. They're taking people in from Turkey as I speak. One woman had a Zoom call with one of the bariatric surgeons this morning. She was thrilled. She's going to see him in his hometown, so she gets to go over there. So it's not a case of you have a surgery in Ireland. You have to travel to London. It's under an hour and 15 minutes flight. So you're under the right, threshold. So you don't get like deep vein thrombosis, you don't get really severe. Harley Street are taking governance of the patient. So they stay in their hospital overnight. They have specialized, hotels, and they have their own rooms, all these apartments that's nearby that you're housed by the nursing team. And, so we were able to take all the aspects of patient advocacy and put it in such a way that people can now afford it. So hopefully Aesthetica will grow. I haven't even advertised it yet. And yet we are bulging at the seams with inquiries. So hopefully I'm going to do some good to the right people and that they don't make the wrong decision.
And talk to me about the mental side of it. Like, does everyone coming to you, do they all need what they're looking for? Or sometimes are they being driven by something outside of that, and you're having to, and I know we had a big conversation, it's my choice and all that kind of thing. Sometimes do you have an obligation to influence their choices, if you know what I mean?
Yes, we do. So you have to think about, like, social media plays a big part. What is beauty? What is the standard of beauty? My idea of beauty is the uniqueness in someone. Colour of their eyes, the way their nose is, how their jawline. Like, there's plenty of striking women out there that don't conform to what standard of beauty is nowadays on social media. I think Love Island was one of the big things that caused a massive influx of people for surgery as well. But you've got to remember, like, we've got women that come in and they're like, oh, I need this done and this done. And the surgeon kind of knocks them flat on their bum. And they're like, you actually don't. You're not that bad. Same with us in the aesthetic side of the Aesthetica. They come in expecting to have like 12 or 1,300 euros worth of work done on their face because this is dropping and that's dropping. It's amazing how you can change someone's perception by giving them a dose of reality and educating them on what they need to do and having a mirror. But the other side of the mental health aspect is, why are you doing this? Who are you doing this for? What was said? So we get it all the time in here. I had a complication after surgery back in July. One side of my face fell. And it was purely to do with the anesthesiologist had told me different things. It was one of these things that would have happened to me. I never had complications from my rebuilds. It was only in July. One side of my face didn't fully move. I was actually doing a video and I talked about like surgery and stuff like this. And I talked about like different things. And I had explained in the video on a live, listen guys, my face isn't moving properly on one side. As you can see, I had a complication from surgery. I was very open about it. I'm no longer going to put aesthetics in my face and my face heals, this and here. And it was great to see the response he got, but there's always somebody in the crowd that's a troll. She ruined her face with Botox. Well, no, actually, I didn't actually ruin my face. That same person that said I ruined my face with Botox had put it across social media on comments and, was very nasty about how I looked. Her hair is a mess. She's too skinny. She's too fat. State of her going around. Oh my God, she owns a plastic surgery company and a aesthetic company. Oh, state of her. Like, who'd go to her? Go and look and see what I won an award for. Go and look at the long hours that my staff and I put in. That type of aspect they don't look at. But this woman in particular had said, oh, she botched herself with Botox. Funny story again, karma came back. A couple of weeks later, we got a message from her saying, listen, I went to a girl in a shed in the back of her house and she did a bit of Botox. I can't move my face. I really need help. Do I turn her away? No. Do I educate her and forgive her for what she's done on me? Yes, 100%, because it's ignorance and it's not an informed decision that she's made. It's social media has pushed her into that direction. Do you want to look like the good looking person on social media that has a high life, or do you want to be the person that's working hard and trying to change people's perception of themselves? I know what I'd rather be and what I am. So yes, mental health is a big thing. A lot of people are committing suicide because they don't look like the norm. A lot of people in the LGBTQ community are overlooked and are afraid to go in and ask for help because there is no transgender services. They're left to look at somebody else's decision on their own face. If they're a domestic violence survivor, it's the exact same process if they were, in the transgender community. So yes, mental health plays a huge part in it. And sometimes you do have to turn around and tell someone to stop.
Is there a cooling off period around, someone requesting to do something and the procedure is actually happening?
Yes, plastic surgery, definitely. We give them like a month. So, for example, we have a date next month that you can get. We never rush anyone in. We don't do the whole hard sell, get in this weekend or anything like this. What we do is that you have a consultation with the surgeon. You're then given the option to see him when he comes into the surgery. So, for example, you've had your Zoom, you've had a chat, it's educated you a bit, you've talked to your family. If you are interested in going ahead with it, you have access then to the surgeon again a second time. So you can request to see the surgeon again. Now, depending on his diary and their diary, it can be another Zoom, but we would prefer if they came in to speak to the surgeon so he can physically see the aspect of the person. He can mentally understand what they're doing. In aesthetic, if they're coming in for aesthetics to be done, for prime example, I was in work here on Monday. I left for London obviously on Tuesday. I'm only back today, but I was in there on Monday. A woman came in for treatment and she was asking questions of, oh, I seen this deal that was online, blah, blah, blah. That's what I want done. And my staff are they're taught and trained to look out for body dysmorphia. So first thing was, well, what do you think you need done? Why do you think that treatment is suitable for you? And so I said, oh, my friends had it done, this, that, and the other. And then she was like talking about totally different things that weren't in this offer, this treatment that we had. So immediately I got up from the desk and walked through the door and walked out. And I said, hi. And she's like, oh, it's you. Can't believe it. I follow you on TikTok. You're very honest. Well, I have to be. If I'm not honest, then whatever. I turned her away, not because she couldn't afford to have all this work done, because she didn't need to have it done. And she was ill-advised. She just saw a deal and jumped on it. It's not suitable for your face. You're going through medication, you're finishing off cancer treatment. It's not suitable for your face because you weight in your face and it's a waste of money. I'm not going to waste your money. I'm going to recommend something else, So there's loads of different aspects. And then we have psychologists that come to us and we have their cards, have a chat with this, or a woman's group. There's a woman's group. You're not alone, or a man's group. We've had many people that have come in and offered their service into aesthetic, and we're very grateful for those individuals that do help because we're not medical professionals to train to talk about those different aspects. We're only given the highlights of what to watch out for.
Yeah, because like any other business, it can have bad actors, and you're in the industry where, there's a lot of vulnerable people, I suspect, who have to have this done in their own heads and they're willing to spend big money. So you can see how easily it would be to take advantage and clean up. Michelle,
Yes.
What's happiness to you?
Happiness to me is peace. Happiness to me is not having to worry about somebody botched. Happiness to me is many different things. It's making sure that my kids are happy and healthy, that my dog is I just rescued a golden retriever recently. So it's about the small things in life. It's family. Happiness to me is seeing somebody walking through the door and realizing they're not the mistakes that social media has made them out to be. They're not, they don't conform to someone's standard of beauty. Well, Jesus, I wish I had your eye color. I wish I had your length hair. If you were a hairdresser and I walked in and I had said to you, listen, I want my hair short, you're going to say, fair enough, it's whatever you're feeling, whatever, if you don't like it, we can always put extensions into lengthening it. So why can't you have the informed consent and the education to know what you want and what's your happiness? Happiness to me is to make sure that people don't die from something, that I've done all the best that I can. Now, I'm not always going to catch everyone, and I didn't. There's a lot of people that followed me on social media and then unfortunately fell into the web of these deceitful people on social media, and have gone to Turkey or have gone to really bad places for botchings or with aesthetics. I'm not always going to be everyone's cup of tea, but happiness to me is when they walk in the door and said, you know what, you saved my life, or you saved my sister from going to Turkey, or that's happiness for me. That's one person I can actually feel like, oh, I've done something good, I'll get into heaven,
Yeah, and it strikes me that you're a very driven person. So to that end, what does winning look like for you?
Winning is exactly what happiness is. That's winning. That's winning. It's not about money in the bank. It's not about having your face on every billboard. It's about creating awareness and a trust with people, patient safety, people advocacy. Needs to be a voice out there where nobody has talked about anything before.
Okay. So my very last question for you, and these can be random ones. If you could live a particular day in your life again, what day would it be?
St. Patrick's Day back in the 80s when I had all my family members alive, and I'm standing at the top of Christchurch with a green knitted cardigan and my hair in 2 green ribbons, and I'm watching everyone being so happy with all the colours and sitting on my uncle's shoulder and knowing and going home to have, Irish stew and my grannies, listening to music of my dad on the radio or at a live gig. Happiness to me is my childhood. I'd love to go back there. But then again, as an adult, happiness to me is sitting on the sofa watching a horror film with my dad at random hours of night, and he giving out about horror films today, and they shouldn't do the remakes. That's happiness to me.
He likes horror movies, does he?
He does. He wasn't allowed to watch them when we were younger. He'd watch them at night when he had jet lag, and I had difficulty sleeping when I was at home with my parents. I'd have no difficulty when I was in Nano's home. And what would happen was I'd get up in the middle of the night, I'd sit and I'd watch The Exorcism. I'd tuck my feet under his leg and I'd watch telly. That's still a thing for me since I'm a child, tucking my feet under my dad's leg. I'm watching at my age, and I'm in my 40s, and he's 80 now next year, or next month, I should say, still on tour, and he's in his 80s. I still watch a horror film. That's my piece, horror hammer films. And
to this day, I still wouldn't watch horror movies. I can't sleep after them. I think they're too disturbing. So no, I won't. But your household is obviously a tiny bit different, Michelle.
Oh, raised by hippies and a woman who knows what she wanted. So I think I've got a great childhood, and I had a great rearing. So let's just say I'm thankful for all that.
Yeah, you haven't done too bad at all. Michelle, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me get to know you a little bit better, and the listeners, of course. Thank you.
Greg, thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me. Mind yourself.
Cheers.
Bye.
You too. Take it easy. Thank you for listening to the When Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.